What's up, everyone? This is Dan. I'm going to be doing a series, I believe, on some Zoom poker. So this will be part one of the series. Real quick before I talk about any, details about how I feel Zoom should be played, a couple interesting hands going on right now. Clearly we have the call on the right. Unfortunately, hit the nut flush on the river and get check shoved on. Hit pocket kings and boat it up in the river, but I think definitely a call there. On the left table, raise queens pre-flop, c-bet flop, bet turn again because I think he can have a lot of like ace jacks, ace x of diamonds, maybe some jack queen suiteds, and with that ace of hearts hitting on the river, I think we got check back. Here we're going to this guy actually, this might not be a great play. I do like to have some type of 4-bet bluffing range on the button when I'm going to be getting 3-bet a lot by the blinds. It looks like the guy that 3-bet me wasn't a full stack, and so I don't think it's as good to 3-bet or 4-bet bluff recreational players, just because usually the 3-bet range is weighted much more towards value hands, and so I don't think you necessarily get the folds required for 4-bet bluffing them. And so for those type of players, my range is definitely weighted much more. My 4-bet range is weighted much more towards value. Happened to work out in that scenario though, so can't complain too much, I guess. So as far as Zoom poker goes, I think one of the main differences between regular poker is that, clearly the game style, you fold a hand and get a new hand immediately, lends itself towards a lot of players playing a lot more nitty than they normally would. Nits who only like premium hands, they don't necessarily have to branch out and play like 10 jack offsuit from the cutoff or like ace 5 suited from another gun, so they can just fold those hands and they actually become even nittier than they normally would be. So you have like the 1916 nits and 6 max playing like maybe tightening up a little bit and becoming like 18 or 17, 15, and so they're tighter. And then like the fish who normally might play like 60 VPIP or whatever, they very often don't necessarily feel the need to play those very worse bottom of the range hands that they sometimes play just out of boredom, and they can just fold those and wait for hand like king deuce suited, which is like top of their range. That it's like the top of their garbage range, I guess. Whereas oftentimes they're playing like 9-4 offsuit just because like it folds them in late position and they haven't played a hand in 3 hands and they just feel they need to play. And so there's definitely a lot less of the super bad fish, but there's still plenty of players that don't know what they're doing post flop and they just play it actually a bit too tight. And so I think, in my opinion, the correct adjustment is to loosen up a bit, and definitely from late position and even from earlier position, maybe even play more aggressive than you are used to. Just because since people aren't playing like the really crappy hands and they aren't necessarily stacking off with bottom pair, or they aren't necessarily hitting more bottom pairs, like since the range is stronger pre-flop, they tend to hit a slightly stronger range on the flop. It becomes more important to steal the blinds and just go after people since they're folding too much. The last hand, it's kind of example. I 3-bet underland razor with 10-7 offsuit flop, middle pair on ace 10x. I choose a c-bet just because I don't expect to get a ton of value, but by checking back, I don't expect to induce a lot of bluffs either. And so I think a lot of times he might have like jack queen, king queen, and those are hands I don't want to give free cards to. And the other hands he might have in his range like 7s or 8s, which aren't really going to give action if I check back. And so the worst case scenario is I check back and he hits one of his overcards, or I check back and he hits like a 7 or 8 and gets a set, and the 7 or 8. Well, I guess the 7 gives me 2 pair, but like if he hits like trips with a pocket 8s, it looks like a pretty safe card for me on the turn. So he bets turn, I call with middle pair because I feel like I check by flop, I feel like I have to at least call turn. And so there's not a lot of times there's a benefit of giving free cards if you think your opponent can't catch up that easily and will bluff the turn when you check. But that was a scenario where I just think, even though I'm not going to call by worse, I just don't think there's a ton of merit to checking to try to induce.